I never really felt like I fit in with Aunt Olivia and Uncle Frank's picture-perfect world, and the lakefront wedding of their beloved nephew Daniel was the ultimate reminder. Everything was immaculate. Rose arches laced with white orchids, a string quartet playing some Vivaldi piece I couldn't name, and servers in all black weaving between glittering guests. Everyone looked like they'd walked out of a luxury magazine. Me, I was just trying to stay out of the way in a button-up I borrowed from Maya and a pair of slacks I'd sewn myself after my last paycheck went into rent. They didn't even want me here, to be honest. "You're lucky we didn't uninvite you," Aunt Olivia had hissed that morning while touching up her lipstick. "Don't embarrass us, Aaron. Just smile, clap, and leave early." Maya squeezed my hand in the hallway, but I knew what that look meant. We were in enemy territory, the kind that smiled with teeth but sharpened knives behind backs. Still, I came. I always came. For Daniel, for family, for some desperate craving to prove I belonged somewhere in that twisted web of blood and obligation. But nothing prepared me for what Uncle Frank pulled during his speech. He stood in front of the gathered crowd, glass of champagne raised, voice booming with false warmth. "Today, we celebrate Daniel, a man who's made us proud in every possible way." I smiled weakly, waiting for the cliché toast to pass. But then he looked at me. "And unlike certain disappointments in this family," he continued, eyes locked on mine, "Daniel has always upheld the values we care about." Silence. You could hear a fork drop on the patio tiles. All those glittering guests turned their heads, the ones who remembered I existed. I felt my throat close, chest tight with disbelief. My heart pounded like a drum solo I couldn't stop. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor, or better yet, the lake behind us. Aunt Olivia smiled smugly. Daniel looked like he wanted to disappear too. But Maya? Maya stepped forward. She didn't flinch, didn't stutter. She just walked, calmly, powerfully, toward the microphone. And in that moment, I knew something was about to shift. Maya's heels clicked across the stone patio like punctuation, confident, deliberate, unshaken. The crowd parted like instinct recognized power. Aunt Olivia's smile faltered. Uncle Frank blinked, caught off guard. And me? I forgot how to breathe. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice clear and steady, "but that's enough." Frank puffed up like a rooster. "Who are you to interrupt this? I'm the woman who loves Aaron," she said. "No theatrics, just truth. And I'm not going to stand here while you humiliate him in front of 100 people." You could feel the temperature shift, like the air itself had stopped to listen. Maya walked up to the stage and, without asking, took the microphone from Frank's stunned grip. Her fingers brushed his, and I swear he flinched, like she'd shocked him with static. "You call him a disappointment," she began, voice amplified. "But let me tell you who Aaron really is." I stood frozen by the fountain, eyes wide, every muscle in my body screaming to hide. But Maya didn't waver. "He's kind, creative, strong in ways none of you have ever cared to see. You mock him for not fitting into your world, but maybe your world is the real problem." A few murmurs rippled through the guests. A couple of people nodded. One woman actually clapped, quietly, but still. "You say he's an embarrassment?" she continued. "Well, what I saw today, this speech, this cruelty, that's the real disgrace." I could see Aunt Olivia's jaw tighten, her painted smile trembling at the corners. Daniel stood awkwardly beside the cake, glancing between his parents and me like someone caught between tectonic plates. Then Maya turned to me, her eyes softened, the edge in her voice melting into something gentle and electric. "I love you," she said, "now only for me. And I don't care what they think." She pulled a small velvet box from her coat pocket and got down on one knee. I swear the earth stopped spinning. Gasps. Phones came out. Olivia actually dropped her wine glass. "Aaron," she whispered, "will you marry me?" I couldn't speak, couldn't move. I just nodded, fast, breathless, overwhelmed. Yes, I finally croaked. Yes, of course I will. The moment was pure chaos. Some people cheered. Others looked deeply uncomfortable. Frank looked like he'd swallowed a lemon whole. But none of it mattered. Maya stood, slid the ring onto my finger, and pulled me into a kiss so full of certainty, I thought I might disappear into it. That night, the narrative shifted. No longer was I the invisible relative who got pitied in corners. Suddenly, I was the one they whispered about for an entirely different reason. Later that night, long after the guests had dispersed and the catering staff began to sweep up the champagne-soaked linens, Maya and I sat outside by the fire pit at her apartment. The place was warm and filled with little things she loved. Books with folded pages, a ceramic mug she claimed made coffee taste emotionally richer, and an open-concept kitchen where I'd already started dreaming up recipes we'd never have to share with judgmental relatives. She handed me a glass of wine. You haven't said much. I'm still recovering from the whole public engagement/family detonation thing, I said with a weak laugh. Her eyes stayed on me, reading beneath the joke. She always did that, peeled back the humor I used as armor. They humiliated you, she said quietly. I nodded. Yeah, but not for the first time. There was a long silence between us, filled only by the soft pop of firewood. I stared into the flames, feeling a strange cocktail of exhaustion, relief, and something dangerously close to grief. It wasn't just the speech, I finally said. It was everything before it. The years of being the backup plan, the afterthought. I grew up thinking if I worked hard enough, if I kept my head down, they'd see me, love me, not manage me. Maya slid closer and wrapped her hand around mine. They never deserved you. I looked at her, tears burning behind my eyes but refusing to fall. Do you know how many nights I stayed awake wondering what was wrong with me? Why Daniel got praise for breathing, and I got scolded for existing too loudly. Her grip tightened. There's nothing wrong with you, but there's a hell of a lot wrong with them. And yet, some broken part of me still wanted to believe they'd wake up and apologize. Some child version of myself, clinging to a fantasy where Olivia would finally see the quiet things I did, or Frank would say something, anything, kind. Instead, my phone buzzed. Frank, come to the house. Tomorrow. Noon. We need to talk. Maya saw the screen and raised an eyebrow. Wow. Straight to and need to talk and not even a congrats. I snorted. Classic Frank. You don't have to go. I know, I said, voice low. But I think I need to. The next morning I stood in front of their penthouse like someone waiting for judgment at the gates of hell. The elevator ride alone felt like it lasted an hour. My palms were sweaty, and I'd been clenching my jaw since breakfast. They opened the door like they were hosting a brunch. Stiff smiles, neutral tone, zero warmth. You're late, Olivia said. I wasn't aware this was scheduled with a minute-by-minute agenda, I replied, stepping inside. Frank was already seated in the living room, arms folded like a disappointed CEO. Daniel was there too, sitting awkwardly on the edge of the couch, like someone trying not to take sides, even though I knew, deep down, he already had. Frank wasted no time. Your behavior yesterday was absolutely unacceptable. Sorry, my behavior? I repeated, blinking. You embarrassed this family, Olivia added. You let that woman take over a sacred event with a soap opera stunt. Maya didn't embarrass anyone. She told the truth, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Frank slammed his hand against the coffee table. She humiliated us. No, I said calmly. You did that all by yourselves. Their faces shifted. They hadn't expected defiance. I'd always played the good one, quiet, compliant, conveniently invisible. But that version of me had been buried beneath the fire pit ashes last night. You've always been sensitive, Olivia said coldly. Overreacting. Unstable. Is that what you call public emotional abuse now? I asked. Because I call it cruelty. Daniel suddenly stood up. He's right. They both turned to him like he'd grown another head. What? Frank barked. You crossed a line. Both of you, Daniel said, eyes darting between them. You've spent years tearing him down just to build me up, and I let it happen. But I saw it clearly last night, and I'm done pretending it's okay. You're taking his side now? Olivia's voice cracked, not with sadness, but disbelief. No one's taking sides, Daniel said. We're just done letting you rewrite the story. Frank looked like he was about to explode. His face turned red, and he pointed a trembling finger at me. You've been a disappointment since the day we took you in. And there it was. The truth. The dagger. The sentence he'd probably whispered behind closed doors but never had the nerve to say aloud. Until now. I felt it like a physical blow. But I didn't crumble. Instead, I stood. You've made it crystal clear where I stand in your life, I said, voice shaking only slightly. So let me return the favor. I don't need your approval. I don't need your money. And I definitely don't need your twisted version of love. I turned toward the door. Aaron, Daniel called. Wait. I paused, bracing for the usual plea to just talk it out, to smooth it over. But instead he said, I'm coming with you. My head whipped around. What? He nodded. I should have stood up for you a long time ago. Frank looked like he was going to have a stroke. You'll regret this, Olivia snapped. No, I said, turning back to her. What I regret is spending so many years trying to earn something you were never willing to give. And just like that, I walked out. Daniel beside me. I didn't look back. That night, as Maya, Daniel, and I sat around the same fire pit, everything felt surreal. Daniel looked at me with a mix of guilt and awe. I used to think you were the weak one, he said. Now I know, you were just surviving. I thought you were their golden child, I replied. But maybe we were both just roles they wrote for us. He nodded slowly. Let's stop playing them. And we did. Some mornings feel louder than others, even without sound. The Monday after everything exploded, I stood in Maya's kitchen, barefoot, coffee in hand, still in the oversized hoodie she insisted I accidentally stole. Sunlight poured through the windows, spilling over our little table like some sort of blessing. Daniel had crashed on the pull-out couch the night before. He'd barely spoken during dinner, but now he sat in the corner, scribbling into a notepad like he was trying to write his way out of our family. You okay? Maya asked as she passed behind me, trailing her fingers along my back. Casual, familiar, grounding. I nodded. Yeah, just quiet. You're allowed to be, she said gently. You just set your entire childhood on fire. That takes a minute, I exhaled. She had a way of saying things that made them feel both brave and survivable. You know what's weird? I said after a beat. I don't miss them. I miss the idea of them, like a version of Olivia and Frank that never existed but somehow still lived in my head. Daniel looked up. I get that. I turned to him. Do you? He nodded. I used to think I was their legacy, but now I think I was just their project. We all sat in silence for a while, just letting that sink in. It wasn't sad exactly. It was liberating. Sadness is when you lose something real. This was shedding something false. Later that week, Maya pushed a course catalog in front of me. What's this? I asked, raising an eyebrow. It's a sign, she grinned. Or, more accurately, a spring semester registration guide. I scanned the cover. Community College of East Shore. Interior designed culinary arts, digital branding. Maya, you've talked about opening your own bakery for 3 years, she said. Now's your chance. Take a class. See if you still love it, or at least bake enough that I can keep pretending you're fattening me up for hibernation. I laughed. A real one, the kind that reached behind my ribs. You think I can just start over? I think you already have, she said, brushing her thumb along the side of my face. Now make it official. So I signed up for a night course in pastry arts. Just one class, one tiny commitment to myself, but it felt like planting something that might actually grow. A few days later, I opened the mailbox and found the first of many letters from Olivia. The envelope was thick and expensive, cream-colored with a gold-embossed return address like it was trying too hard to be royal. I opened it because I still hadn't learned not to expect sincerity from bad people in expensive shoes. It was 4 pages of half apology, half justification. We've been under pressure lately. It wasn't personal. We didn't mean for it to escalate. You know we've always wanted the best for you. They didn't sign it with love. Just Olivia and Frank. The next week, I got a second letter. This one was more urgent, demanding. They wanted to meet. They wanted to resolve things like adults. They wanted to repair the family legacy. Maya was the one who suggested we meet them, not to reconcile, but to say goodbye in person, to make it real. Daniel insisted on coming with us, just in case they try to guilt trip you into moving back or joining some family trust or swearing allegiance to the empire. He said, "You'll need backup." So we picked a neutral spot, a cafe downtown with exposed brick and no emotional history. We got there first. I chose the seat facing the door. I didn't want them behind me again. They arrived 5 minutes late, dressed like they were going to a business meeting. Olivia wore pearls. Frank looked like he was about to close a hostile takeover. They didn't order coffee. They just sat down and launched in. "We've had time to reflect," Olivia began, folding her hands over her handbag like a queen addressing a courtroom. "And while we don't agree with your methods, we understand your feelings. It's not the same as apologizing," I said flatly. Frank sighed like I was being unreasonable. "Aaron, you're making this bigger than it needs to be. You made it big the moment you used a wedding toast to call me a failure," I snapped. "All I did was respond." "We've supported you," Olivia said, wounded. "We gave you a roof, food, education. You gave me conditions," I said. "You gave me survival, not love." They stared at me, trying to decide if I was worth convincing. Maya reached for my hand under the table, but I didn't need the reassurance. I was done. "I'm not here to fight," I said. "I'm here to tell you that I'm finished. No more texts, no more letters, no more check-ins or guilt trips. I'm carving a life where I don't need to constantly wonder what part of myself I have to silence to earn your approval." They said nothing. Daniel stood and dropped his key to their penthouse onto the table. "Same goes for me." The look on Frank's face was pure betrayal. "You're abandoning your family." Daniel shrugged. "No, I'm choosing peace." And we left. The months that followed were messy in the best way. I started baking again, first in our tiny apartment kitchen, then in a shared commercial space I rented with a few other creatives. I took on small commissions, cupcakes for birthdays, custom cakes for engagements, and one surprise order for a baby shower that included exactly 0 passive-aggressive relatives. Maya, of course, was my biggest cheerleader. She made flyers, built me a website, took photos that made my icing look like art. Daniel moved into the unit across the hall and started therapy. "I'm tired of being emotionally constipated," he said one day, while eating a croissant I made at 3 a.m. "I want to feel things, like on purpose." We started healing, not with loud declarations or viral TikToks, but slowly, quietly, through action, through showing up. One night, Maya and I were lying on the couch, her head on my chest, the city glittering outside like we'd earned every tiny light. She looked up at me and smiled. "You know," she whispered, "you never needed them to see you." I traced my fingers down her arm. "I think I finally believed that." And just like that, I knew they didn't break me. They just made room for the version of me they never would have accepted. And that version, he was just getting started the morning of the wedding. I didn't feel nervous. I felt grounded. It was quiet in the suite, the kind of quiet that comes after surviving something loud and relentless. Daniel was adjusting his tie in the mirror, fumbling with a boutonniere that absolutely refused to cooperate. "I swear this flower is trying to sabotage me," he grumbled. "You're trying too hard," I told him. "Let it be crooked. We're not marrying the queen," he smirked. "You are, though. in a power suit and heels. I smiled. He wasn't wrong. Maya and I had decided on a small wedding. 40 people, max. No ballroom, no formal registry. Just people who loved us, candles in mason jars, and a view of the lake from the bluff behind the bakery I'd helped build. We catered it ourselves. Well, mostly me. Maya had banned me from baking our own wedding cake. You're not working on our wedding day, chef boy, but I may or may not have snuck in a few miniature tarts the night before. The guest list was carefully curated. No one was there out of obligation. No one needed to pretend. It was a celebration, not a performance. But two names stood out when the RSVP envelope came back. Olivia and Frank. They said yes. Not a phone call. Not a note. Just a formal acceptance, signed in handwriting I'd seen 1,000 times on passive-aggressive birthday cards. Daniel was the one who brought it up. So, are we seating them with the cutlery or sending them a Zoom link instead? They can come, I said, but they won't control anything anymore. They arrived 20 minutes late. Olivia wore cream, because of course she did, and Frank looked like he was attending a Senate hearing. They sat near the back, arms folded, expressions unreadable. But I didn't let them in. Not really. Not into the moment, not into my emotions. They were guests, and nothing more. The music played. The crowd stood. And then she appeared. Maya, hair pinned back with sprigs of lavender, a tailored ivory jumpsuit, and the kind of eyes that dared you to challenge her and begged you not to look away. She wasn't gliding. She was arriving. Like this moment had been waiting for her the whole time. When she reached me, she smiled. Not with her lips, but with her whole face. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi," I replied. "You look like the answer to a question I didn't know I was allowed to ask." She blinked once, slowly. "Then let's ask all the new ones together." The ceremony was short. Honest. No long passages about eternal bliss. Just promises we wrote ourselves, to choose kindness over convenience, to speak the truth, even when it trembles, to love freely, without asking permission. When the officiant said, "You may now seal your vows," we kissed, and the crowd erupted in cheers, hoots, and applause. Everyone except two. But that was okay. The reception was a dream. String lights, acoustic covers of old songs we loved, and a table of desserts that made people question their loyalty to the dinner they just ate. Daniel gave a toast that started funny and ended with him trying not to cry. "To Aaron," he said, raising his glass. "The guy who walked away from everything that didn't see him and somehow built something better in the rubble." There wasn't a dry eye at our table, except, again, for two. Olivia and Frank hadn't moved. They hadn't said a word. But during one of the slower songs, while Maya was twirling in circles with her college roommate, they approached. I didn't move. "We wanted to say something," Olivia began. Her voice wasn't icy, just tired. Frank nodded, like it cost him something. "You look happy." "I am," I said simply. There was a pause. Then Olivia said it. "We were wrong. 3 words. Small. Awkward. Late. But not nothing." I looked at them. Really looked. For the first time, I didn't see authority or cruelty. I saw 2 people who had been raised to believe love was control, and that silence was discipline. They'd handed me the same script they'd been given, and I'd finally chosen not to perform it. "Thank you," I said. "That's all I needed. But I'm not walking back into that house again." Olivia opened her mouth, but I shook my head gently. "No more negotiation. This isn't a punishment. It's a boundary." Frank's eyes flickered, with shame or surprise or both. They left quietly, and that was the last time I ever saw them. Maya found me on the balcony after midnight, barefoot, hair down, dress shoes abandoned somewhere inside. "Everything okay?" she asked, wrapping her arms around my waist. I nodded. "They said sorry." She blinked. "Really?" "Yeah, and I meant it when I said thank you. But that's as far as it goes." She rested her head against my back. "You didn't just marry me today. You married yourself. I smiled. Guess one finally said, I do to the version of me that didn't need to earn anyone's love. She turned me around and kissed me. Slow and soft and sure. That's the only version I ever saw. The weeks that followed were like breathing air I didn't know I'd been living without. I launched my website. Maya helped build the brand. Daniel started co-hosting baking live streams with me on Sundays. Badly, hilariously, and always in matching aprons that said Trauma Bakers Club. My business grew, so did my joy. And every so often, Maya would twirl into the kitchen, dip her finger into the batter, and say, "Still marrying me, right?" Every time, I'd say yes, 1,000 times yes. Epilogue. Some people say closure is overrated. That healing doesn't need a bow. Maybe they're right. But mine came with buttercream and lavender and a woman who saw me when no one else dared to. It came in a crooked boutonniere, a crooked family tree, and the straightest path I'd ever walked, forward. And if you ever ask me if it was worth it, I'll just point to the life I built and whisper, watch me keep choosing it. Story 2. I wasn't expecting fireworks or a grand speech. I just wanted a normal night, a birthday dinner with my family, where I didn't feel like a guest at my own table. So yeah, I planned it, paid for it, booked a quiet, cozy place with actual cloth napkins and warm lighting, the kind of ambiance that says thoughtful without trying too hard. My mom loved the wine list. That was enough for her. My older brother, Darren, RSVP'd the day before. Classic. My younger brother Kyle asked if he could bring someone, then showed up solo. Predictable. The evening unfolded as you'd expect. Kyle launched into his usual collection of funny childhood stories, mostly embellished tales, where I was the punchline or, more often, left out entirely. Darren talked for 10 uninterrupted minutes about some leadership conference, where a guy in a Patagonia vest called him a visionary. My parents beamed like it was gospel. I smiled, poured wine, passed the bread, stayed quiet. That was always my role. Quiet, agreeable, invisible. Then came dessert. A single slice of cheesecake with a candle. They sang, half-hearted and off-key. I clapped along like I wasn't dying inside. Then Darren grinned, tapped his laptop and said, "We made you something." I blinked. Something? "A little slideshow," Kyle said, already booting it up on the restaurant's projector. "Family memories. You'll love it." The screen lit up. The first clip was old backyard footage Darren's 9th birthday party. Then came photos, holidays, graduations, vacations, messy birthday parties, chaotic mornings, warm hugs, family jokes, one after another. I watched. I waited. I searched. I wasn't in a single one. Not cropped out, not turned away. Just not there. It wasn't like they forgot to include me. It was like I'd never existed. No Halloween costumes. No birthdays. No blurry candids from Grandma's house. Not even the family dog we only had for 5 months. And somehow that dog made the cut. The slideshow ended with a soft fade to a quote on a beach background. "Family is everything." The room clapped. My mom wiped away a tear. Darren leaned back, satisfied. "What do you think?" I smiled. "Yeah, that was really something." Then I stood up, calm, smooth. "Excuse me a sec." No one stopped me. No one asked where I was going. I walked down the hallway, past the coat check, past the noise, locked the bathroom door behind me. Then I pulled out my phone. There was an email draft waiting. I had written it that morning, just in case. I stared at it for a moment. Not because I was second-guessing, but because I already knew what would happen once I pressed send. The unraveling wouldn't be instant, but it would be irreversible. I tapped send, slipped the phone back in my pocket, took a deep breath, straightened my collar. Then I walked back to the table. Darren was halfway through a story about a potential startup partnership with a VC he met in Scottsdale. Kyle was showing my mom a TikTok on his phone. My dad was refilling his wine. My chair was still warm. No one asked where I'd been. I sat down, picked up my fork, and smiled, because they had no idea what I'd just done. But they would. I used to think the forgetting was accidental. A missed invite. A forgotten birthday text. My name left off the family group chat. I excused it. Told myself I was just quiet. That quiet people get overlooked. But after enough years, enough birthdays with secondhand gifts or none at all, enough stories where I was conveniently left out, it became obvious. It wasn't an oversight. It was a pattern. From the beginning, I was the in-between kid, between the golden eldest and the baby charmer. Darren got accolades and comparisons to Dad. Kyle got warmth and indulgence. I got the leftovers, if that. I had a stutter growing up, not all the time, mostly when I was nervous or had to speak in front of people. In our family, that was most of the time. At dinner, Darren would mimic it, stretching syllables until Kyle fell over laughing. My parents would shush them, sure, but softly, like background noise, like they didn't want to make a scene. Eventually, I just stopped talking. In 5th grade, I entered the school talent show, wrote a song, performed it. No one came. That same year, Kyle got a new phone for Christmas. Darren got a camera. I got a half-used sweater that still smelled like cologne. They got cheers. I got nods. In high school, I tutored kids in math, won quiet academic awards, stayed behind after field trips to help clean up. At family gatherings, I was the tag-along. This is Darren, our entrepreneur. And Kyle, the comedian. Oh, and this is Adam. He's good with numbers. I stopped inviting people over, stopped sharing things. By the time I hit college, I'd forced the stutter out of myself. No speech coach, no therapy, just the slow, grinding pressure of knowing no one else was going to do it for me. That same quiet grit carried me through building my first business out of a dorm room, shipped my own inventory, slept 3 hours a night, answered customer service calls while eating ramen. Darren, meanwhile, was launching Elevate Core, his tech-forward networking platform. It bombed. Missed deadlines. Buggy UI. Too much flash, not enough follow-through. And yet, he got a launch party, finger foods, branded banners. My parents gushed. I only found out about the party through Kyle's Instagram. I didn't say anything. A year later, when my own company started gaining traction, I approached Darren with an idea. I'd route some of our bulk material orders through his supplier contacts. It wasn't efficient. It actually cost me more. But I told myself it was a loyalty play, a way to help him quietly without hurting his pride. He was grateful for about 5 minutes. Then he started talking like he was doing me a favor. Don't worry, bro. I'll keep pricing stable for you. I got you. I smiled and said thank you. But that's when I started planning. Not because I was angry. Not yet. But because I realized something important. He didn't see me. None of them did. They still talked about me like I was the awkward kid in the corner. Still laughed about the time I cried when they jokingly left me at a rest stop during a road trip. Still introduced me as our other son. I was propping up his business, quietly underwriting it. My ops team flagged the inefficiencies a dozen times. I told them to keep the contract anyway. Said it was a relationship thing. What I didn't say, Darren's company was only standing because I was holding it up. And eventually, I was going to let go. That slideshow wasn't the start of anything. It was just the last straw. The morning after dinner, I made eggs, went for a run, and opened my laptop. Business as usual, Darren called. I ignored it. Kyle texted a meme about how I ghosted my own birthday party. I didn't reply. Then came the voicemail from my mom. Adam, honey, I don't know what's going on, but Darren seems really upset. He said something about the contract. Maybe it's all just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. That was their favorite word when something hurt. A miscommunication. Not neglect, not disrespect. Just a little whoopsie. Like when they forgot to come to my senior thesis showcase, or when Darren crashed my college graduation trip and made it about his business pivot, or when Kyle used my Netflix account for years and still laughed about how I was such a background character. Yeah, no more misunderstandings. That email I sent, it terminated our supply contract. No warning, no explanation, just a clean break. And that break? It hit harder than they expected, because beneath Darren's glossy LinkedIn posts and startup buzzwords, his company was barely surviving. Our contract wasn't just support, it was his lifeline, and I had cut it. Quietly, cleanly, without ever raising my voice. At first, nothing changed. On the surface, anyway. Darren kept posting motivational quotes over filtered selfies. Sometimes failure is the price of greatness. Kyle shared photos of rooftop drinks and captioned them with things like #grind mode. My parents sent me a forwarded joke about siblings with the subject line. Made me think of you guys. I didn't respond. The email I sent didn't crash the world overnight. That's not how this kind of thing works. The ripples started slow, subtle shifts under calm waters. Then the real consequences started rolling in. The first real crack came about 2 weeks later. One of our mutual suppliers forwarded me an email Darren had sent. He was scrambling, trying to negotiate his own contract directly, offering to undercut pricing. It was messy, desperate. Worse, he copied one of my employees by mistake. I didn't reply to that either. Then Kyle called. 3 times in one day. I let each one go to voicemail. The last message was short, bro. What's going on? Darren's losing it. Can we talk? No, we couldn't. I wasn't angry anymore. I was tired. Tired of being the quiet fix-it guy in the background. The reliable one. The one they only remembered when something broke. This wasn't about revenge. It was about finally stepping out of the role they'd written for me. That week, I started cleaning out old folders on my laptop. Deleted old family photos where I'd been cropped out of frame, sometimes literally. Cleared out, saved voice messages that I used to play back when I needed motivation. You know, the ones where mom called me so smart, but only after gushing about Darren's latest idea or Kyle's newest tattoo. Then came the real fallout. Darren's operations guy emailed one of my junior execs in a panic. They hadn't been able to fulfill 2 major orders because our pipeline was their pipeline. No one else was willing to front the same terms. The guy used words like disruption and unexpected vendor drop. We both knew that was a lie. They'd had 6 months' notice. They just didn't take me seriously. After that, it snowballed. Investors pulled out. Projects stalled. One of Darren's co-founders posted a cryptic status about needing new direction and clarity of vision. His tone was pure damage control. Kyle texted again. You really gonna let this ruin the family? Over a slideshow? I didn't reply, because it wasn't about the slideshow. Not just that. It was the pattern. The birthdays skipped. The Christmas gifts that felt like afterthoughts. The graduation no one remembered. The family emails that somehow never included my name. The slideshow was just the most honest version of the story they'd been telling my whole life. The version without me in it. The thing about people who are used to you being quiet. They don't know what to do when you stop playing along. At first, they pretend it's nothing. Then, when it is something, they assume it's a phase. After that, when the damage starts showing, they try to patch it up like nothing's changed. But I'd changed, and no one saw it coming. A few weeks after the collapse began, my mom sent a letter. Yes, a real letter. On stationery. In her shaky cursive, she wrote, Adam, your father and I feel caught in the middle. We know things got a little off track. Maybe Darren said something without thinking. We're not choosing sides, sweetheart. We love all of you. Can we meet? Just to clear the air. Clear the air? There was no smoke left. The fire had already done its job. They didn't want to meet with me to understand. They wanted to meet so they could feel better about not understanding. I folded the letter and dropped it in the trash without a word. Meanwhile, Darren tried spinning a new narrative. He started telling people I'd pulled the contract because I was bitter, that I'd always been jealous, that I was struggling, emotionally unstable. I heard it through the grapevine. A mutual acquaintance even messaged me on LinkedIn. "Hey, heard you were going through something. Let me know if you need anything." Code 4. Darren's version is spreading. But here's the thing, once you stop hiding, you stop caring who's writing the script, you start showing your own. When another vendor reached out, curious about why we dropped Darren's company, I didn't sugarcoat it. I said, calmly, professionally, it wasn't a good business fit anymore. The contract was based on loyalty, but loyalty only works when it's mutual. That one sentence was enough. It made its way back to the right ears. Turns out, the truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be clear. The final collapse wasn't dramatic. It was slow, then sudden. One day, Darren's company website quietly went offline. Then a press release announced a strategic pause for restructuring. Investors stopped returning his calls. Friends stopped replying to his posts. Even Kyle pulled back, his social feed suddenly devoid of their brotherly hustle selfies. Eventually, Darren moved back in with our parents. Kyle had to sell his car. I heard through the grapevine that some extended family members, people who'd invested small amounts into Darren's company based on my involvement, were pissed. Rightfully so. I hadn't taken their money. I hadn't even known. But my name had been used to give Darren's dream credibility. And when it all came crashing down, they looked at me for answers. I gave them none, because I owed them nothing. Then one day, months later, my cousin Lila reached out. She had been at my birthday dinner. She had watched the slideshow. She asked me for a copy. Darren had sent it to her proudly, still thinking it was some kind of tribute. She watched it again. Then she called. "Adam," she said, "I just realized something. You're not in it. At all." Her voice broke a little. I didn't notice that night, but now I can't unsee it. I'm so sorry. That moment meant more than I thought it would. Not because I needed the apology, but because someone finally saw the gap, noticed the erasure, named it. That call was the beginning of the real closure. Not long after, my dad called one more time. He left a voicemail. "I don't know what happened, Adam. I really don't. But I miss you. We miss you." And I believed that he missed someone. But not me. Not the version of me that quietly built his own life, made his own money, pulled his own weight, and finally put it down. He missed the old version, the easy version, the background character. But I was done being that. So I didn't call back, because for the first time I wasn't waiting to be seen. I was already standing in the light. The silence didn't hurt like it used to. After everything fell apart, the contract, the company, the family illusion, I expected more chaos, more confrontation. But what I got was stillness. Calls slowed down. Messages stopped. No more guilt texts from distant cousins. No more vague, just checking in emails from people who once called me family, but never treated me like it. It was quiet, but not empty. For the first time, I wasn't living on the edge of someone else's life. I wasn't a placeholder in my own story. The background noise faded, and what I found underneath it was peace. Not joy, not triumph, just space. And that was enough. I'd always been told that family is everything, that no matter how hard things get, blood matters more than feelings. But here's what no one says. Sometimes blood is the first wound. Sometimes the people who raised you also erased you, bit by bit, moment by moment, with soft smiles and forgotten birthdays and sideways jokes that never landed on them. I used to keep a drawer full of memories, photos they did send, cards they did write, notes with love you always in my mom's careful script. I'd hold them like proof that I was seen once, maybe even loved. I threw them out, not out of spite, but because I don't need proof anymore. It took time for the fallout to settle. Darren's company went under, quietly. No headlines, no scandal. Just one more failed startup with a pretty website and a broken back end. A few investors tried to claw things back. One even contacted me, hoping I'd bail things out. Said it was the right thing to do. I told him the truth. I did the right thing the moment I walked away. Kyle tried to spin a new narrative. Said I was going through a rough patch. That I lashed out because I was unhappy. That I needed space, and they were giving it to me. Nice way to rewrite history. They didn't give me space. I took it. Because the only thing worse than being forgotten is staying where you're not welcome. About 6 months after it all started, I got a message from Lila again. My cousin, the one who'd finally noticed the gap in the slideshow. She said, "They're still talking about you like you left for no reason." Then she added, "But I tell people what I saw, what you lived through. I get it now." And that right there, that's simple, I get it, hit harder than anything Darren or Kyle ever said. I didn't need validation anymore, but it was nice to know the truth had legs. It was walking around without me. The last real contact I had with my parents came in the form of a birthday card. No slideshow this time. Just a folded piece of cardstock with a printed message and a handwritten line underneath. "You'll always be part of this family, no matter what. Love, Mom and Dad." There was no mention of the business. No mention of the years of being pushed aside. No apology. Just the same soft language they always used. Safe, passive, comfortable. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I'd finally learned that not every open door deserves to be walked through. Some doors you close gently and leave behind. People ask what happened like it was a single event. A feud, a fight, a misunderstanding. But it wasn't. It was 1,000 small cuts. The missed calls, the empty seats, the stuttered jokes, the subtle way they smiled more at Darren, laughed more at Kyle, asked less about me. It was the birthdays where I paid the bill, and they still treated me like the help. It was the family photo wall with 12 frames and not one of me. It was the way they called me our other son, like an afterthought with a heartbeat. That kind of thing doesn't erupt. It fades, until one day you realize you've been fading with it, and you have to choose keep shrinking until you disappear, or stand up and walk out before you become a ghost in your own life. That's what I did. I didn't burn bridges. I just stopped building them. And in the quiet that followed, I built something else. A home that feels like mine. A team that respects me. Friendships that don't depend on family titles. I even started mentoring a few young founders, quiet kids, mostly. The kind I used to be. Smart, overlooked, careful with their words. I tell them what no one told me. You don't need to be loud to matter. You just need to know when to stop waiting for people to see you and start seeing yourself. Sometimes I wonder if they replay the slideshow. If they see the missing face, the gap in the timeline. If it finally hits them that it wasn't an accident. That I wasn't late. I was never invited. And now, I'm not waiting to be. The last time my mom's name popped up on my phone, I let it ring. Then I blocked the number, not out of anger, but because I'd said everything I needed to the night I walked to that bathroom, opened my email, and chose myself. They had written me out of the story. Now, I've written one without them. It's quieter, but it's mine, and it's not missing anyone. So, do you think I went too far? Or maybe not far enough? Either way, I'm not looking back. Story 3. Growing up, I always thought there was a certain unspoken rule in families. You support each other, especially in hard times. That belief carried me through a lot years of juggling part-time jobs while keeping straight A's, paying my own way through college, even quietly helping my parents when they hit financial bumps. I never kept a running tab. That wasn't the point, but turns out I misunderstood the rule. Apparently, it only applied to my younger brother, Ethan. I'm Ava. I'm 31 now, and until recently, I thought I had a decent relationship with my parents. I wasn't the favorite Ethan had that role locked down since birth, but I didn't resent it. I had my own path, my own rhythm. I was the dependable one, the one who never caused trouble, the one they didn't have to worry about. And then I got sick. I'll spare you the gory medical details. Just know it wasn't life-threatening, at least not at first, but the treatment was intense, expensive, and definitely not covered by insurance. I tried to handle it on my own, drained my savings, picked up freelance gigs outside my full-time job, cut back on everything but rent and meds. Still, I was barely treading water. I didn't want to ask for help, but eventually, I hit a wall. One night, after a particularly grueling hospital visit, I picked up the phone and called my mom. She answered like nothing was wrong. "Hey, sweetheart, how's work?" I forced a small laugh. "It's fine, Mom. Actually, there's something I wanted to talk to you about." "Of course, what's up?" Deep breath. "I've been dealing with some medical stuff, and the bills, they're piling up. I hate asking, but is there any way you and Dad could help me out a little? Even just temporarily?" Silence. Then, laughter. A short, awkward chuckle that made my stomach drop. "Oh, honey, you know we're not made of money, right?" I sat there, stunned. I tried to respond, but she kept going. "You're an adult now. You're supposed to be handling these things. We worked hard for our money, Ava." I was too tired to argue. "Right, of course." "Sorry," I asked. "I knew you'd understand," she said, as if I'd just signed a contract agreeing to be their emotional rock forever. I hung up. That night, I cried. Not because of the money, not even because of the rejection, but because I realized something that I hadn't allowed myself to acknowledge before. I had never been the one they showed up for. I was the backup plan, the responsible kid, the one they could forget about because I'd figure it out. And I did. I scraped by. Worked myself to the bone. Stayed up late juggling medical paperwork and client invoices. I got through it, alone. Then, exactly 5 weeks later, I opened our family group chat and nearly dropped my phone. "Just picked up my new ride. Thanks, Mom and Dad." Ethan had posted, along with a photo of a brand new silver SUV parked in front of my parents' house. I stared at the screen, heart thudding. New ride? Fully loaded. Brand spanking new. Not a scratch on it kind of ride? I couldn't help myself. I called my mom. "Hey, Ava, did you see Ethan's new car? Isn't it gorgeous? You bought him a car?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. She hesitated, just for a beat. "Well, yeah. His old one was falling apart. We couldn't let him keep driving that thing. But you told me you couldn't help with my medical bills." Her tone shifted. Defensive, patronizing. "It's not the same thing, Ava. You're fine now. You handled it." Ethan needed a reliable car to get to work. There was something about that sentence, "you're fine now," that broke me. I had begged for help while I was drowning, and they didn't even throw me a rope. Meanwhile, Ethan gets a new car because his was inconvenient. That was the day I stopped sending them money. See, I'd been quietly helping out for years. Birthdays, vacation deposits, even paying a portion of their mortgage once when they were between checks. I never questioned it, never demanded recognition. But after that phone call, something inside me shut off. They didn't need me. They just liked what I could provide. A few weeks passed. No mention of the change. No thanks for all the support over the years. Not even a passive-aggressive comment about missing money. Just silence. Until a year later they called. I was sitting on my balcony, enjoying a rare, quiet afternoon, when my phone lit up, Mom. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hi, sweetie," she chirped, like nothing had ever happened. "Your dad and I are looking at cruises for next summer, and thought you could help us pick one. Maybe even book it? You're always so good with that stuff." I swear, I could feel my blood pressure spike. They hadn't called in months, not to check in, not to apologize. Just cruise help. Because apparently, I'm Expedia with a credit card. I paused, trying to collect myself. "Are you serious?" She laughed. "Well, of course. You know we're not great with online stuff." I leaned back in my chair. "You told me you weren't made of money when I begged you for help with medical bills. But now, you want me to fund your luxury vacation?" Her tone dropped, just slightly. "Ava, that was a long time ago. It was a year ago. I don't see why you're bringing that up now. Families help each other." "Exactly." I cut in. "I helped you for years. And the one time I needed something, you looked the other way. I'm not your bank, I'm not your travel agent, and I'm definitely not paying for your cruise. Click. She hung up. And that's when the real storm began. I thought the hang up would be the last I'd hear from her. I figured after I made it crystal clear that I wasn't paying for their cruise, she'd storm off in a huff and complain to her bridge club or whatever. Instead, she went nuclear. The next morning, I woke up to texts from half the family. Aunt Marie, your mom says you've stopped talking to her. What's going on? Uncle Rick, your parents are really hurt, Ava. Is this about Ethan's car again? Grandma, sweetheart, whatever happened, we're family. Talk to your mother. They had already spun the narrative. The same story they always told. Ava, the ungrateful daughter, holding a grudge for no good reason. Of course, no one mentioned the part where they left me high and dry when I was sick, or that they dropped thousands on Ethan's SUV while telling me they were broke. I didn't reply. Not right away. I needed time to cool off. But the more messages I got, the more I realized something. Silence wasn't working, so I broke it. I dropped one message into the family group chat. Since everyone seems confused, let me clear things up. A year ago, I asked Mom and Dad for help with medical bills while I was going through treatment. They told me they couldn't afford it. Then they bought Ethan a brand new SUV. Now they want me to pay for their cruise. I said no, that's it. If you think that makes me selfish, feel free to block me, and I logged out. That should have been the end of it. But people like my parents don't let go of control that easily. Within hours, my phone was lighting up again. Mom, how dare you embarrass us like that? Dad, we raised you better than this. Ethan, you made Mom cry. She's literally sick over this. Sick. That one hit hard. Not because I felt bad, but because it reminded me of how sick I'd been, and how they hadn't even blinked. Suddenly, Mom's feelings were a national crisis. My health, apparently, had been just a minor inconvenience. I held the line. I didn't reply, and when they kept calling, I started blocking. But then came the next phase, the pop-ins. First, it was a knock at my apartment door on a random Thursday evening. I peeked through the peephole, and there she was, Mom, arms crossed, lips pursed. I didn't open it. Next day, she showed up again. I told the front desk to turn her away. Then she tried calling my landlord. Yeah, my actual landlord. Apparently, she told him she was concerned about my mental state and needed to know if I'd renewed my lease. I only found out because my landlord gave me a heads up. She seemed overbearing, he said carefully. Didn't give her anything. Just thought you should know. That was the moment I stopped waiting for things to calm down and started protecting myself. I unblocked her long enough to send one last message. Do not contact my landlord. Do not show up at my apartment. Do not come to my work. If you try anything else, I will get a restraining order. You've been warned. Then I blocked her again, permanently this time. I thought that would do it, that they'd finally back off. They didn't. A few days later, I was halfway through a shift when my manager tapped me on the shoulder. Ava, there's a woman out front asking for you. Says she's your mom. I froze. She's crying, my manager added, and making kind of a scene. Of course she was. I stayed in the back and asked security to escort her out. My manager was surprisingly cool about it, but it was humiliating all the same. I had to sit in the employee bathroom afterward just to calm down. Not because I felt guilty, but because I was shaking with rage. I texted Ethan later that night. Me. Tell Mom to leave me alone. She came to my job today. Again, he responded 2 hours later. Ethan, she's just desperate. She misses you. Me, she doesn't miss me. She misses my money. No reply. Funny how quickly that line shut him down. I didn't hear from him again for 2 weeks. Then I got a voicemail from him, slurred and stumbling, probably drunk. She's your mother, Ava. You don't just cut off family. You owe her. There it was again. That word, owe. Like I was a debt to be collected. Not a daughter, not a person. just a line item on their financial spreadsheet. What none of them seemed to get, what they still refused to understand, is that I did try. I gave, over and over, quietly, without ever asking for anything back. But when the moment came that I needed something, even just the smallest bit of help, they closed the door. So I closed it right back and locked it. The next escalation came the following month. I was out running errands when I got a message from my cousin Jenna, one of the only relatives I still kind of trusted. Jenna, hey, just a heads up. Your mom's been talking to people, saying you're mentally unstable and that you've been financially reckless, that she's worried you're having some kind of breakdown. I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. She was planting seeds, trying to make me look irrational, unbalanced. Like this wasn't the direct result of her actions, but some kind of mental spiral on my part. It wasn't just disrespect anymore. It was character assassination. I called my lawyer. I'd never done that before, never thought I'd need to. But I explained everything, the harassment, the smear campaign, the appearances at my home and job, and he helped me draft a cease and desist. I emailed it. I mailed it. I printed a copy and dropped it at her front porch, folded inside a manila envelope marked confidential. Still no apology. Just more silence, more manipulation attempts behind the scenes. I knew they were still talking, still spinning stories, still trying to make themselves the victims. But I didn't respond, not once. And you know what happened? Nothing. The world didn't end. The sun still came up. My friends didn't disappear. My job didn't vanish. In fact, for the first time in years, I felt light. Like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't even realize was crushing me, until I finally set it down. I stopped flinching when my phone buzzed, stopped checking my emails with that tight pit of dread, stopped bracing myself for some new passive-aggressive guilt trip disguised as a just checking-in message. And I started living my life. I got promoted at work. Finally took that trip I'd been putting off. Rebuilt my savings. Started therapy. And you know what I learned? Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is let go. Not with a scream. Not with a fight. Just walk away. Lock the door behind you and throw away the key. But the thing about people like my parents, they don't like being shut out. They don't take silence as a boundary, they take it as a challenge. And just when I thought it might be over, they found one last way to try and get back in. A few weeks passed. I'd started to believe maybe, just maybe, they had finally given up. Maybe the message had landed. The cease and desist, the blocked numbers, the silence. Maybe they were tired of trying to pull me back into the same role I'd played for years. The helper, the fixer, the family piggy bank with a pulse. But I should have known better. I got the call on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in line at the pharmacy, scrolling mindlessly through emails, when an unknown number flashed across my screen. Normally I'd send it to voicemail, but something told me to answer. It wasn't mom or dad. It was their lawyer. He was polite, too polite. Said he was calling on behalf of my parents, who were concerned about the breakdown in communication. Wanted to know if I'd be open to a family mediation session. Said it might be healthier for everyone if we could clear the air. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I just asked one question. Is this about money? There was a pause, then a sigh. They feel like the financial ties within the family have become unclear. I almost laughed. Unclear? The only thing unclear was how they still thought I owed them anything. I said no. He pressed. I said no again, this time with the kind of finality that doesn't leave room for argument. And then I hung up. Not an hour later, I got an email from Mom. Just a subject line. We need to talk. No body. No explanation. I deleted it. 2 days later, a thick envelope showed up at my apartment. It was from them. A letter handwritten. 8 pages. Mom's handwriting at the top. Dad's scribbled signature at the bottom. I read the first paragraph. Then I burned the rest. No dramatic gesture. Just a quiet goodbye to another attempt at manipulation. because I already knew what was inside. I didn't need to read it. It would be the same old script. We raised you. We sacrificed for you. You used to be such a good daughter. We're family. But I don't believe in that kind of family anymore. The kind that uses guilt as currency. The kind that calls love a debt. I had finally seen it for what it was. They weren't sorry. They were scared. Scared of losing their last thread of control. Scared of what it meant if I really stayed gone. Because once the scapegoat leaves, the whole system cracks. And it did. The cracks started with Ethan. He texted me out of the blue a few days after the envelope. Not angry this time. Just tired. Ethan, they're freaking out. I think they expected you to cave by now. Me, I won't. Ethan, I know. Honestly, I kinda get it now. I blinked at that one. Me, what do you mean? Ethan, they started leaning on me once you stopped paying for everything. It's been hell. I sat there staring at the message. For once he wasn't bragging, wasn't defensive, just honest. Ethan, it's like, they act like helping them is love. But when I couldn't help, they turned on me too. There it was. The mask had finally slipped for him too. I didn't respond right away. I wasn't ready to let him all the way back in, but I didn't block him either. Because for the first time in years, he wasn't coming at me with entitlement. He was coming with truth. That was new. That was maybe something. I don't know what happens with Ethan. I'm not making any promises, but I know this. I'm done shrinking to keep anyone else comfortable. I'm done paying for a version of family that only exists when I'm useful. These days I live different. I keep my space sacred. I work, I rest, I laugh. I make dinner for people who show up without conditions. I give gifts without being asked. I help, but only when I know it comes from a place of choice, not obligation. Because real love doesn't demand proof. It doesn't tally receipts. And it sure as hell doesn't show up at your job to cry in front of your manager. When you stop funding a vacation, a few weeks ago my therapist asked me if I felt like I'd won. I smiled. No, I didn't win. I just stopped playing. That's the part people don't get. Sometimes healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's not a grand moment or a dramatic speech. Sometimes it's just one quiet decision after another, choosing peace over chaos, boundaries over guilt, silence over another pointless fight. And slowly, day by day, your life becomes yours again. So yeah, maybe they think I'm selfish. Maybe they think I abandoned them, but I didn't. I just finally chose myself. And honestly, that's the best thing I've ever done.